Hello, and welcome to another conversation on sustainability. Today's guest is back with us again. Earlier this year, we had the opportunity to speak with him about the role technology is playing in creating more productive and resilient industrial operations. So it made a ton of sense to invite back Amir Khoshniyati, this time to explore how better information about the physical world can help organizations reduce waste, use resources more intelligently, and make better decisions. Amir has spent much of his career helping organizations gain visibility into materials, products, assets, and the inner workings of supply chains. He's currently vice president at Wiliot, a company at the center of the ambient IoT movement, and we are very excited he's signed on for a sequel. Amir, welcome back. It's great to have you with us again.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So last time you were here, you told us, you confessed to us that you'd rather sing everything like a musical for a day than speak in rhyme for a day. You also might have confessed that that might be harder on everyone around you than on you. So I'm curious, in the spirit of condition monitoring, how bad would it be for them? So let's imagine everyone around you that day had a tag that could monitor and report their condition. By the end of the day, what would their dashboard show? So I'll give you four options. You ready? Green would be harmony stable. Yellow would be minor disharmony detected, monitor closely. Orange, you start moving in the orange, that's disharmony threshold exceeded, corrective action recommended. Or, of course, there's red, critical harmony failure, emergency shutdown initiated.
I would say definitely red. Maybe even a fifth category that is almost like a purple or black, all the way off the spectrum. I was not expecting this icebreaker, so I would say absolutely on the far end of the bad spectrum here.
Oh man. Well, listen. Let's start maybe with the big picture. One theme that comes up often in sustainability conversations is that organizations can't improve what they can't see. How much of today's waste or inefficiency or unsustainable operation, how much of it just starts with a visibility problem?
It's the foundation, right? So first we have to be able to track our assets, be able to understand how they're moving through the supply chain. And once that's done, you can start to get into all the bells and whistles on the capability matrix. If we're talking anything around condition monitoring, temperature, humidity, exposure to light, you can't get there without knowing where the asset is. And if you're getting inconsistent data around, let's say, temperature volatility, but you can't pinpoint where it's becoming volatile, then you're going to have a problem still in your supply chain because even that asset might get picked out of it. But the next time that asset goes through that same journey, more than likely it could be susceptible to those same types of issues. So foundationally, it always starts with location and tracking, and then it comes in layered in with the condition side of it.
Where do you see the some of the biggest blind spots today, like places where organizations are still relying on maybe assumptions instead of what's really happening in the real world?
I would say starting point really is around any time there's a handoff. And what I mean by that is if you're leaving one source or node in the supply chain and then something moves in transit to another location, that's where we typically are classifying areas that we call brownouts because the infrastructure requirements historically, when you look at machine vision type technologies that require line of sight with QR codes, barcodes, or even with RFID, where the infrastructure cost of gates, bridges that are associated with reading those tags, they're a higher price point. They become very expensive to outfit trucks, trailers, anything in transit. That's where the biggest issue today comes in. So manufacturing to distribution, that handshake, distribution to shop floor, that handshake, and that's where we're also seeing a very good inroad with our technology. Is that because the hardware is a relatively low lift from an expense perspective, you could get in and outfit a whole supply chain very quickly. You get the additional capabilities that you have today, but with automated counts within the facilities. But anything in transit now, you eliminate that issue around the brownouts, and now you're layering in a technology that gives you full visibility and automation throughout the process.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more. So when those blind spots are removed, what changes? What kinds of decisions can you make that you couldn't make before? What kind of impact does that have down throughout the chain?
Being able to have a seamless handoff from one facility to another um, provides assurance around compliance that the items are moving the way they're supposed to, but also that confirmation of an auto receipt of an item being shipped out and then being received at a facility eliminates the finger pointing. You know exactly what's happened in transit. If anything happened from a volatility standpoint on temperature, on misrouting of the item on the wrong truck, you're able to highlight that, and then the brands and the suppliers can look back at the data, and then they can make an action based on that. So that's kind of step one. Step two is really around understanding if an item is received, and we see this all the time, and that item is sitting what we call dwell time at a facility. The work might have been done, all the heavy lifting, that it was shipped on time, it was in transit, and there was all the compliancy metrics while it was in transit have been met. It was received, that's been met, so everything's been confirmed. But that item now is sitting on a dock door, or it's sitting within a facility and it's not going to a refrigerator or a freezer. So all that hard work is done. The end step is that somebody is forgetting to load it under the right time parameter, and now that perishable is going bad. So being able to then get visibility and send event triggers to say you have about 10 minutes, and after this 10 minutes you can't sell this product anymore. It can no longer move to refrigeration or freezing, and it can absolutely not be moved to the front of the store to be sold. That level of assurance and visibility, it doesn't exist today, and that's where we're layering in very well. So we're helping brands, their suppliers, come together with assurance and automating that process.
And this might seem very obvious to you because you're neck deep in all this stuff, but for people who might not be as close to it, how does all of this ladder up to meaningful sustainability outcomes?
Well, it creates ultimately, about 15 years ago, we were looking at a circular economy. We had so many different spreadsheets around it and we were pitching it, but still, folks didn't really understand what that truly meant. I think we were marching towards better antenna designs, moving to aluminums. We were moving to paper faces. The adhesives, we were trying to figure out which ones actually had the right material stack up so it could be recycled. The chips, nobody had a true idea how to ultimately make them sustainable. I think at a certain point in time, there was pitches around RFID being consumable, so you could actually print it on like a loaf of bread and eat that bread, but and say that it was something that you could digest the antenna, but nobody knew what to do with the chip, so you'd have to chew it and spit it out. So these were running jokes, but there was a lot of organizations that were putting a lot of investment behind to try to figure it out and actually make sustainable products. And then it went the long shot into actually edibles for antennas. Um, Now, putting all jokes aside, the era that we're in and the foundation that we've built towards is that we are moving to a more sustainable future when it comes to the tags and the hardware itself. So even with our Gen 2 transition to Gen 3, we moved also from copper to aluminum. We eliminated some layers like the black PET, it's paper face. So we have all the sustainable aspects to it. Now you go and you deploy that into the market, and then you start to look at visibility of your products from inception. So when it's in a manufacturing facility, all the examples we're going through today, through the supply chain, and ultimately when those items are disposed. A lot of the applications we have today are CPG oriented. So when something is consumer packaged goods and that item is opened up, whether it's something that is, it's a perishable or it's a dry item, whatever it might be, and you take that out, that package essentially it's end of its shelf life. So as we're working with a lot of the corrugate manufacturers, they have their standards around sustainability, so do we. And the expectation is when those items are disposed, and these tags are consumables, they're disposed together, so they go down basically a circular economy. And then once they're disposed, they can be reused again and manufactured again, and then the supply chain starts all over. The other piece of it is that when you're actually tagging assets and they're moving through the supply chain, there is a sustainable aspect to it because you have visibility of your products from inception to the end life. So it's one side of it is the packaging side and how all that's going together, which we're marching towards. The other side is the brands themselves having visibility into where your products start and where they end, and when they do end, having the right notations on your products and everything else so that they're recycled properly, and then the machine and the process starts all over again.
So my next would you rather question for you needs to be something like, if you had to eat a chip, would you want it to be barbecue, sour cream, or an onion, or Cajun? I don't know.
Barbecue, always.
That was a quick decision. You didn't hesitate on
Yeah,
that.
barbecue, you can't go wrong with barbecue.
People sometimes assume, I think, that sustainability requires compromise. Where are you seeing organizations improve performance while also, reducing waste, loss, or unnecessary consumption?
When I look at it from organizations that are really improving and they're breaking through, it's the ones that are truly consistent in their processes. I would start with that. So you have a lot of organizations that they're buying into the sustainability aspects, but they're looking at all their suppliers and they're saying, okay, from a supplying perspective, these are the requirements we have, and they're pushing that pressure upstream to their suppliers so that they are following the mandates to make their job easier. So they're putting less pressure on themselves, but they're making the process work so that the ecosystem can work together. And that's something we even see from a tag perspective, is that we see a lot of themes of materials that we qualify in for the products, the manufacturers that we work with, that they've bought into it, and it starts with the process and how they're working. Now, you look at it from a sustainability aspect, you could do all the hard work. If you're not evangelizing the value of the sustainability, you're not putting programs behind it around the items, that the way that they should be recycled, the rewards you can get behind it, how you create that circular economy, all the hard work means nothing if the end consumer doesn't understand what to do and how to recycle the product the right way. So I think it's up to the brands themselves also, while we go through these initiatives, to also evangelize it the right way, put the right programs, incentivize folks so that the process is working in the last mile and all the hard work is really realized.
Yeah, you just talked about the kind of the onus on your customers or your partners to do some evangelism. Are you seeing sustainability as becoming a bigger priority for them? And if so, how is that kind of showing up in the conversations that you're having with them and the decisions and the projects that you're working on with them?
It's foundational. So any of the top tier organizations, they have it. Many of them even have departments that are allocated to this. So when they come in and they do audits from a hardware perspective, so this is a lot to do on the tag manufacturing side. They come into facilities. They make sure that the makeup of the work that they're doing have sustainable aspects to it. The way they run their machines, everything down to the process engineering is all sustainable, and it's something that has to do with efficiency down the line. And then when you put that equation out of it, then they look and see, based on the data, how are you creating more value and more sustainability through the supply chain? And that's where we come in. So one side of it is for us to do the part on the innovation side, guide a lot of the hardware providers, especially the tag manufacturers, on what are the best ways that we can innovate and create a more sustainable future based on the tags and labels that we put out in the market. And then the other part is, how do we really rely on the data that we're providing to give the right level of insights, so we're creating a true circular economy that we're marching towards, and which is ultimately the goal.
We'll get to kind of one of the really, really fun parts about this. For those who may be less familiar, can you explain what battery-free IoT, ambient IoT, what does that mean and why does it matter?
Well, it's creating limitless possibilities. And I think over the years, there's been an evolution. Barcodes gave rise to RFID. RFID started to give rise to some contactless technologies, which was a subset of RFID, near field reads. COVID helped accelerate all of this, obviously, and there was a quite a bit of influx of really uh, consumer engagement type technologies with COVID. So QR codes became prominent on menus. Credit cards evolved into all of them being uniformly contactless. That evolved also to NFC technologies for payment portals. All of this is foundational for the direction that we're going with physical AI. So you're getting all these capabilities, you're getting longer read distances, you're getting enhanced use cases really around location, temperature, humidity, tamper detection with light use cases that we can detect that light if it's in a package and things have been opened. The future is really leading into this direction of everything being enabled and all of your items really truly having a digital identity and being able to interact with each other. Now, the advantage that we have right now that we're seeing is a lot of the hurdles that have existed with line of sight technologies or with RFID, like those brownouts while items are in the supply chain and going from one location to another, we've solved those issues. And then we're now solving it in a format that, one, the TCO, the total cost of ownership, is very, very low. Your ROI time is less than a year to go and implement these technologies. And this is at massive enterprise scale. And the fact that these tags don't have battery and we're harvesting energy off of ambient waves, energizing and sending signals with all these use cases, the sky's the limit. And we have right now tags that we can put out in the market, and we like to think that unless something extremely destructive happens to that tag has a limitless lifespan. So it will live with the journey of the product, and whether that product has a very long journey and a long time through its shelf life through the supply chain, or if it's something that's only a couple days, maybe even within a day, we can still get the same level of data visibility based on that tag being idle with the product or whether it's moving fast through the supply chain.
Can you help us understand, what sustainability advantages come from being able, to connect and monitor these physical assets and products and materials without adding another battery to the world?
Not having a battery is an unbelievable first step in the sustainability talk. We have a lot of clients out there that they say, well, this is great from a technology perspective. What do we do with the battery? And then we pause them. We say, actually, there is no battery. And then they pause and say, well, how does it work? And we work through all the methodologies of the tag and how it energizes and transmits and recycles again the power source every time it energizes. That battery topic is a very, very important one. One, because of the tag, because of the limitless lifespan behind it. Two, because you don't have volatility. A lot of these tags that have batteries, they go into different volatile temperatures in a freezer and a refrigerator. The shelf life of the battery now becomes different, the way that it drains. And then also the most important for them is if you have a battery, how do I recycle you? What happens if there's an adverse condition and the battery has a reaction and that impacts my packaging or it impacts my product more importantly? So we pause them, we explain it, and then the eyes kind of open up, and then we start to go through the methodologies. But foundationally, it's a very good point, and we should have probably started there. The battery aspect is a big driver, even more important than the material stack up, because typically that's a mass of the product when you look at the percentage of weight that goes towards what is sustainable and what's not. That differentiator for a battery is major, even if it's a printed battery.
How do these, thousands, maybe millions of small decisions along the way, about condition, about routing, utilization, handling, how do they add up to, meaningful sustainability impact?
So we like to think of it like a swarm. And so what we mean by that is if we have an analogy of a swarm of, for example, bees out there, The way that they function, if one or two or three or 10 of them in this massive population fall out of the swarm, you still know that that swarm is moving in a direction. And you could still predict if it's leaving one location and moving towards a hive, they're all going to go towards that hive. You have enough data points within all those bees in that swarm that they're going in the right direction, and you can make an assumption on what's going to happen. And we like to think of the platform and the way that we operate in the same format of a swarm. That we're getting all these great data points within your items through the supply chain, and through prediction and algorithms, we can start to make assumptions into what is going to happen and also prevent them with the right level of events ahead of time to flag you before issues happen. So there may be anomalies here and there, but we can detect it and still, using that swarm analogy, have the predictive insights that we have enough data points, or even better, we've seen this before and compare the data sets, and that we can make actionable insights based on that.
What role do global interoperable standards such as Bluetooth play in helping this future to scale and to become possible?
It's major, and I think as soon as a standard or compliance program comes in, we have to do our part to really get on the train and be a part of it, to evangelize it the right way, but also make sure that we have consistency on how we're following that standard, because that's going to be ultimately how we're bringing in data. And if we're doing it in a format that's parallel to another company, everybody's winning. And what I mean by that is the ecosystem, the customers, they're all getting a consistent format to follow. If somebody is breaking outside of that norm, then you're going to find those anomalies. That's where the issues are going to start to rise. So when I look at Bluetooth foundationally, that's what we're standing on.
What gives you, I guess, the most optimism about our ability to build a more sustainable future? Using this technology and partnering with with each other.
I would say definitely building on the last question, it's having the right positive push in the right direction. That this is something that, from a compliance perspective, we all, as organizations that are coming together, frenemies, are following the right standards protocol. So we're all helping each other to create more of a stronger market where we can all win. But then the other piece of it is that we want to create a ecosystem that is beneficial in creating value for our customers. So sustainability is a byproduct of the good data that comes in and customers have actions around. So for us to get there, the compliance side is so important. So that's where I really value our relationship. And what I'm most excited about is, as we're really pushing each other for more standards down the line, and more accountability around the standards that we're putting in place. That's what gives me a lot of excitement down the line for a great future.
If you were pressed against a corner, and had to say, well, what's your evidence? What proof do you have that at the end of the day we're making a material difference here in promoting sustainability and improving sustainability outcomes? What would you kind of point to first, to help answer that question?
Well, it's a great question. I would say any of the major trade shows that you attend this year's over the last few years, but specifically this year, you look around, you see that standards committees are walking all over the show. And in many times, they're actually taking major sponsorship steps forward to make sure that there is visibility into standards that are coming forth. When you look at FISMA, when you look at Sunrise, you look at DPP, all of these are standards that are rolling out right now. And although they're not ultimately at their maturity level, as we go through 2026, 2027 is the acceleration year for them. All of these conferences, whether they're IoT, physical AI related, or there's something outside of that, they are a part of it, especially on the perishable side, showing the importance that you have to be on the wagon for compliance. And if you're not, the customers are going to create a mandate behind it. So if you don't have a stamp of approval, you will not be in those projects. So the proof point is really on how quickly the standards committees are actually staying true to their deadlines here. But the influence that they're creating with the customers is forcing them that anybody that they work with has to have the stamp of approval behind it. So foundationally, from protocol perspective, I think everything we're doing together is so great for the mass market. But then when you layer in all the different subgroups that have to do with food and safety, or they have to do with traceability in Europe, whatever it might be, these folks are now tied in by it from a segment perspective and also a use case perspective with each one of the customers. And the proof point is, if you're not on the train, it's gonna fly by you, and you're not going to be a part of the journey.
Amir, thank you so much for joining us again. I mean, I really appreciate how you frame the sustainability discussion around, better information. This idea that visibility creates better information, which creates opportunities for better decisions, and then of course, better outcomes. And the work you're doing at Wiliot, and just across the broader ambient IoT ecosystem is really helping make that visibility possible. So we're grateful for that, and we're grateful for your time and perspective today. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, really appreciate the time. Thank you.